Dysfunctional rich families have always been a great subject for works of fiction, and the best recent drama in this subgenre is indubitably Succession. When you watch it, you feel like you should hate almost every single character in it, but surprisingly that doesn't put you off it. On the contrary, that's why you watch it. And ahead of the Season 3 premiere, we'll recap the action from Season 1 in this video, and there will also be a Season 2 recap coming up in the next few days. The story of Succession centers around the Roy family, whose charismatic hard-ass patriarch Logan Roy is celebrating his 80th birthday as episode 1 kicks off. Logan is the CEO of Waystar Royco, which is a massive media company, and as the title of the show suggests, the main story is about who will succeed him as the head of this company. Logan has 4 children from 2 ex-wives, and currently he is with his 3rd wife, Marcia. She's a bit of an outsider and Logan's children don't trust her, but Logan himself seems closer to her than he is to his own children, which I guess says a lot about him and his children. Logan's only child from his first marriage is Connor, who has been interested in politics from a very young age. You're not an authentic Succession fan if you don't get that reference, but anyway, Connor is a buffoon. And even though he's Logan's eldest son, he's got no chance of succeeding Logan. Connor's got a quote-unquote girlfriend by the name of Willa, who is much younger than him, and they live on a ranch in New Mexico. Willa is basically a high-end hooker. Kendall is Logan's first child from his 2nd marriage. Kendall's own marriage is falling apart, he's got an addiction problem, and he's also having trouble in his business life, which damages his odds of claiming Logan's throne. Roman is the clown of the family. He's also from Logan's 2nd marriage, and we often see him messing with his siblings, especially Kendall. And even though Roman looks like he doesn't take anything seriously, deep down he longs for his father's approval and wants to succeed him. The only daughter in the family is Siobhan or Shiv. She's a political fixer and a smooth operator compared to her siblings, but she can't yet see the big picture in the business world, which is something Logan does expertly. Shiv is in a relationship with a fella by the name of Tom. He also works for Waystar Royco, and at the start of the show he's getting ready for his new post as the head of Waystar's Parks and Cruises division. Tom has a sidekick, Greg, who is Logan's great-nephew. Greg gets a job at Waystar after her mother encourages her to invite himself to Logan's birthday party. This happens right after Greg's stint as a mascot in one of Waystar's park, which ends with Greg vomiting following an attack by a bunch of kids. So Greg goes from being a failed mascot to working at the corporate side of Waystar. Kendall's expecting his father to step down at this birthday party, and he's hoping he'll become the new CEO, but Logan shocks everybody by announcing that he's staying on. Not only that, he reveals that his wife Marcia will take over whenever he passes away. The final nail in Kendall's coffin may have been his failure to close a deal to acquire a media startup by the name of Walter. We see the family's unpleasant side at their traditional softball game as they keep messing with normal people, while Logan fires Waystar's COO, Frank. This is another weird move by Logan because Frank has been with him and the company for a long time. On the helicopter on their way back to New York City, Connor, Shiv, and Roman try to change their father's mind about his decision to make Marcia the CEO after he passes away, but then he suffers a hemorrhagic stroke. Kendall's not on the heli because he left earlier to complete the acquisition of Walter, and Kendall does manage to find an agreement for the purchase, but he has to rush out of there after learning about his father's status. The turf war goes on even though Logan's receiving treatment, as the kids decide whether or not they want to respect their father's new will, which, as we've discussed, would make Marcia the CEO of Waystar. Kendall and Shiv don't want to sign the papers, while the other two, Roman and Connor, want to be good boys and carry out their father's wishes. Cousin Greg is caught in the crossfire when Marcia asks him to bring some of Logan's belongings from home to the hospital, and Marcia instructs Greg to bring the will as well, while Shiv orders Greg to do the opposite, to leave the papers. Greg has just got here, but he's already having to choose sides. He ends up not bringing the will. After some more back and forth, they decide to make Kendall the acting CEO of the company, and this is where Waystar's head attorney comes into the picture, Jerry. She tells Kendall that the company is $3 billion in debt because of Logan's decision to go into the parks business. So Kendall's like, what have I gotten myself into? Logan eventually wakes up, but not before Tom proposes to Shiv, and Shiv accepts. Kendall has to deal with this debt problem because one of the creditors could want their money back if Waystar's stock falls below a certain threshold. Kendall tries to act like his father when dealing with this bank, but he fails horribly, which leads him to seek his friend Stewie's help. Stewie is a private equity investor and he can inject $4 billion into the company in exchange for stocks and a board seat. Stewie gets his wish and the company is saved. In his personal life, Kendall still thinks he can make it work with his wife Rava, but those hopes are crushed soon afterwards as Rava has already hired a divorce lawyer. On top of that, Kendall's not as hot on the business side as he thinks he is, because his father is sickened when he hears what Kendall did, bringing Stewie on board. Logan's disapproval and his suspicions are confirmed when Greg spots Stewie having a chat with Sandy Furnace, who is Logan's enemy. So Kendall has allowed a Trojan horse to come into the company, though he and the others aren't fully aware of this yet. Meanwhile, Shiv is busy digging into Marsha's past. She gets Nate's help to do that, who is Shiv's ex-boyfriend and also a fixer. Things are not looking good for Tom because Nate and Shiv have an undeniable chemistry. Anyway, Marsha somehow finds out about the background check and tells Shiv to come to her and ask her if she wants to know anything. But Marsha proves she's not a throwaway character. She is resourceful and this surprises Shiv. I want to say shit is the fan for this next bit, but that is this show's perpetual state. It is just hours and hours of different type of shit hitting the fan. What I'm talking about is something Tom learns after becoming the head of the company's Parks and Cruises division. He learns that there was a cover-up involving sexual assault and possibly murder, so he just loses his mind and even thinks about exposing all of this. However, he's stopped by Jerry, who learns about Tom's situation from Greg, because Tom confides in Greg. Greg then goes behind Tom's back and talks to Jerry about this, which allows her to stop Tom. So the company's legal counsel is as shady as anyone else in this company. Talking of all those other people in the company, Frank comes back, but not as the COO. No, that post will go to Roman and Frank will be there to guide him through his journey. Roman's also responsible for organizing the company's charity gala because Marsha is preoccupied. In fact, most of what I've been talking about for the last couple of minutes take place at the gala, where Kendall is supposed to give the main speech, but Connor F's things up by believing that Kendall's gonna announce Logan's retirement. So Connor snitches on Kendall for no reason, and Logan himself decides to give the main speech in which he announces that he's returning to his executive role in the company. This isn't the first time Logan snubs Kendall in this short period, as earlier Logan interrupts Kendall's meeting with Stewie and treats Kendall as if he's just a lowly assistant. And by that I mean Logan walks into Kendall's office and pisses all over it, and then orders Kendall to fetch some documents, and goes on to take over the negotiations with Stewie. Thanksgiving drama with the Roys is as juicy as a roast turkey, as Logan's estranged brother Evan arrives from Canada, and we learn just how irreparable their relationship is. Evan, who is Greg's granddad, is a much more idealistic person, while Logan values control and power more than anything else. And this is illustrated by his recent plan to buy a lot of local news networks. He wants to do all of the news himself, which I think perfectly shows what kind of a man he is. Evan eventually marches out of there because he can't stand his brother, but he still rebuffs Kendall's attempt to get him involved in a vote of no confidence scheme against Logan. Kendall thinks this is the way to oust Logan and he asks Evan because he's still a board member, but Evan says no. It's not all bad for Kendall though, because Logan's unstable nature causes 2 board members to support Kendall's vote. Those people are Frank, the former COO and still a voting board member, and Jerry, a non-voting board member and the general counsel. Even though Jerry can't vote, her opinion is important to influence other board members. I used the word unstable to describe Logan, and there's a very good reason for that. During a traditional family game, Logan hits Kendall's son in the face because he's frustrated about the fact that he's having trouble remembering things. This is the final nail in his proverbial coffin because Jerry is convinced at this moment to support Kendall. Tom is involved in two different storylines here, and one of them involves Greg. Tom orders Greg to destroy all documents relating to the crew scandal, and Greg acts like he obliges, but he's a wily fox, this fella, because he makes some copies to have some leverage. He's holding on to some documents that can destroy Waystar Royco, putting him in a pretty good position to advance his career. Tom is also dealing with a prenup agreement. His behavior shows us that he truly cares for and loves Shiv because he doesn't even want to read the prenup. On the other hand, Shiv's methodical approach indicates that she's a lot less romantic, shall we say, and this is confirmed when Tom talks to his lawyer, who is her mother by the way, and learns that there's no infidelity clause in the prenup. When Tom confronts Shiv about this, she says they can be adults in that kind of situation, whatever the absolute fudge that means. You know what's coming soon, don't you? Shiv's gonna bang Nate and possibly others. Oh Tom, poor Tom. The action immediately after the mid-season point is all about the vote of no confidence. Kendall's got everything in place, and even though it'll be tight, he should have the votes he needs to replace his father. But as the famous Bart Robert Burns puts it, the best laid schemes of mice and men often go awry. In this case, Logan is supposed to be in Washington, D.C. speaking to the president as the vote takes place, leaving him clueless as to what's going on in the Waystar Royco headquarters. However, there's a terror threat and Logan's meeting is cancelled, which means he will be in New York to take part in the board meeting. This terror threat causes Kendall to get stuck in traffic because he was in Manhattan to convince a bedridden board member. But convincing that person isn't enough, as Logan himself is in the boardroom threatening and scaring all of the other board members Kendall convinced, like Stewie or Lawrence. Lawrence is on the board because Waystar acquired his media company Volter, as we previously discussed, and Stewie is on because his equity injected $4 billion into Waystar to save it from creditors. Anyway, Kendall's misfortune causes these people, as well as Roman, to either abstain or vote no on the motion, resulting in Logan staying on as the CEO. Logan's not even supposed to be in the room during the vote, but what are they gonna do? Remove him forcefully? Good luck with that. So after the vote fails, Logan fires Frank and Kendall, as well as all the other board members that voted to remove him. The big man stays winning. As a response, Kendall sues Logan for firing him and he sort of isolates himself from the family. Logan plants a story in the papers which speculates that Kendall started using drugs again, and that's why he might have been fired. We see this sort of move a lot from Logan. He doesn't mind destroying his children's mental state or public image. Logan then organizes a family retreat at Connor's ranch in New Mexico, and everybody but Kendall is there. Their presence doesn't mean a lot though, because things heat up sooner rather than later, as Shiv leaves to meet with a left-leaning Bernie Sanders parody by the name of Gil Evis. Shiv is gonna work for Gil thanks to Nate, her ex-boyfriend. Nate is the one who puts this whole thing together, and it finally happens. Shiv and Nate have a sexual encounter. The fact that Shiv is working with Gil doesn't sit well with Logan, because Gil is his public enemy, and Logan's news network, ATN, constantly berates Gil both on a political and a personal level. So Logan scolds Shiv in front of everybody and Shiv leaves crying. Logan even says that Tom is beneath her. Kendall, in the meantime, relapses for real after arriving in New Mexico, but luckily Roman does something actually useful and picks up his brother before he can do more damage to himself. Logan and Kendall's relationship doesn't get any better, and Logan even tells him that he planted the story about his relapse. We also learn a bit more about Logan's backstory, as he mentions the fact that as a child he was abused by his uncle. Kendall doesn't believe or care about this at all, but we see Logan's back later on, which is just full of scars, so he's probably telling the truth. I guess we can tie Logan's harsh nature to his background. The last 3 episodes of the season revolve around Shiv and Tom's wedding, although that particular storyline takes a backseat most of the time because there's so much stuff going on. First of all, Tom's bachelor party in a secret underground area is weird as fudge, and I don't know how much of it I want to describe. Let's just say that Tom has a strange encounter with a blonde woman, and I can't say anything else. Things get quite awkward, just take my word for it. Greg looks after Kendall because Logan asked him to. Stewie and Sandy want to buy Kendall's shares, but then Kendall turns the tables and suggests a team up because that way they can have a hostile takeover of Waystar. Shiv's affair with Nate is in full swing, while their boss, Gil, appears on Logan's news network, ATN. The ATN crew go low as they suggest that Gil caused his wife's suicide. They do this because Gil is Logan's enemy, as we've said, but Gil responds by pointing out that even Logan's daughter works for his campaign. Logan gets mad again, telling Shiv to stop working for Gil, but that doesn't work, so Logan informs Shiv that he won't come to her wedding. However, he walks back this threat and shows up in England where the wedding is taking place. The main setting is Shiv's mother's castle. This is her, Caroline. She is Logan's second wife and the mother of Shiv, Kendall, and Roman. By the way, Roman is now in a relationship with Tabitha, the blonde woman who had an encounter with Tom at the underground bachelor party. Nate is at the wedding as well, and Greg finds out that Shiv is cheating on Tom with Nate, but when Greg tries to tell this to Tom, Tom just loses it and starts attacking Greg. Shiv eventually confirms Tom's suspicions and says she wants to have an open relationship. Tom, being the dumbass he is, says, "Okay, honey," and that is that. Oh, Tom also ejects Nate, but that is beside the point. In between all of this, Shiv brokers a peace deal between Logan and Gil, using the cruise scandal as leverage. Shiv will keep that info to herself as long as ATN stops being so mean toward Gil. So that crisis is avoided, but there's of course another one on the horizon, which is Kendall's takeover scheme. Stewie and Sandy make sure that this attempt takes place on the day of Shiv's wedding, because Logan is out of town. But things take a dark turn when Kendall drives off with a recently fired waiter, Andrew, to search for drugs. Kendall has to avoid hitting a deer, which causes the car to flip and go into water. Kendall is fine, but he can't save Andrew, so he panics and goes back to the castle. This obviously gives Logan the ammo he needs to demolish the takeover attempt because Kendall needs his help. Logan will help if Kendall aborts the takeover and goes into rehab. Kendall is in no condition to find another way out of this, so he just cries in his father's arms, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is how Season 1 ends. My Season 2 recap should be out in the next few days, so until then, tell me if you found this breakdown useful, leave your comments down below, like this video, and subscribe for more movie reviews and TV show breakdowns. That's it for now, take care and see you in the next video.